suddenly you say next month there is no salary. There is only one way, go forward or die, right? How will you survive without salary? That, okay, don't take risk. To survive, I still believe you don't need money. We are in a very dreamy world. We'll reach there where nobody else can reach.
Vishal, I think what you have done is very different from Great HR. It's a EV product, and those of you in the audience who don't know what Fyn does, Fyn is India's fastest growing electric mobility delivery service provider. So tell us how was your journey, and how have you looked at the various stages of your startup?
I would say to start off, there are two stages in which you can start from. So I started from where I don't know what a job is, what a corporate life is, right? So there are someone who start from after doing a corporate job, gaining experience, and then start off. So I really don't know how the stages are going to be when you work and then start up. It is all the more difficult when you get salaries every month and then suddenly you say next month there is no salary, right? That's a difficult job. So
ask me about it. No?
if ever you're going to start, you will have to answer that first question, right? How will you survive without salary? For me, it was from the standpoint, right, I didn't have any experience. So starting afresh from college without any experience in startup, how do we even start taking that decision where all your say peer group is going to say masters or going for good jobs, right? So from that standpoint, how do you take a leap that you'll go and start up, right? So and it's an unknown world. So the first stage, I would term it as the confusion stage, right? Whether to go or no, whether to jump or not, right? So that's the first step. So when you are above that confusion, how will you come above that confusion is just either somebody should push you out so that you don't have any other option, no flying parachute, right? You just go down. So that's what I also did. I just jumped and then realized that I don't have a backup plan. So if you have a backup plan, you'll still hold on to it and you'll be neither there, neither here. So I was pushed into it, or I jumped into it. I got into the startup field. So once you get into the startup field, your confusion is over. There is only one way, go forward or die, right? So because you don't have the backup of funding or anything when you start up. So then you start realizing that to survive, you need to start learning things on the go. So that was the second stage where we are put into an unknown world. You start networking. You start talking to people who have done big, who have done successes. But in all fairness, when people become successful, they also become busy. They will not be able to give you much time for you to mentor. So all the mentors, I would say, at some point are either people who have retired, okay, who doesn't have much jobs to do, and then they can now work on the mentees. But people who are currently working, trying to scale up, they really don't have time. And those are the people who will tell you what exactly is happening in the startup world. So second stage is like networking, finding out a right mentor, and then talking about your idea to multiple people to get the feedback. So that was the first thing I did when I joined IIT Madras. The first thing I did was I went and spoke to all the people who I can get hold of, including professors. So I got very, very different opinions from professor community. I got very different opinion from students or friends. I got very different opinion from parents who said, don't start up, right? That's the easiest way to tell that, okay, don't take risk. So every other feedback, and then which one you choose, that will tell you what your heart wants. If you go by and take parents' advice and say, okay, it's risky, why don't you go for a job, then you'll never start up. So once you take that risk, then the next step is, see, funding has never been a problem when I started initially, because to survive, I still believe you don't need money. So I have lived inside IIT campus without money, without being an IIT, and I have stayed there for 1.5 years. Then I got into IIT Madras program, and then I got incubated inside IIT Madras. So there also, till that time, money was never a focus. But when you start building a team, that's when you realize that you need money, right? You scale up the team, you can't survive without money. Then you start going for fundraising. So when you go to an investor, that's the first time you realize that, okay, whatever you have built is not something that the investor wants, right? You go and talk to them about your product, investor says this will not work. And to be frank, I think Ganesh can also tell me that how many rejections we have gone through. We don't count the rejections now. We are just looking for that one yes from an investor, right? So that phase is very difficult for us when initially you start that's a time where you start self-doubting. Right? When you think that, okay, you are not good enough for this. But if you're able to come above that and you don't give up, so that's something that I would urge every entrepreneur, that never give up until you don't have any other choice. And an entrepreneur never believes that you don't have a choice. Every time you have a choice. Right? So this is the journey of an entrepreneur. And then if you look at every stage, you will always be earning below your peer group who is going for a job. Never go and compare with them. If you start comparing it, you'll never move forward. At some point, so we are in a very dreamy world where we think, okay, after 10 years, 15 years, we'll reach there where nobody else can reach. That's what we do. That's the growth stage.
I like your description of confusion stage. So how many of you in the audience are at the confusion stage? Please raise a hand. Confusion stage. If you're not in the confusion stage, you will not be successful like Vishal. Okay.
I'm still not successful.
Was this your first idea, or you iterated a little bit before you got into it?
This is my third startup. 2 startups failed in 1 year time.
Oh.
And this is my third startup, which I have been running for 10 years.
Cool. Big hand for Vishal, guys. 2 startups fail. Again, the third startup, which is now really going places. Yeah. And Vishal, I want also you to touch upon the fact of the first institutional seed, and in the current environment. Probably you would have raised your seed when things were like much better, but in the current environment, how do you really get to that first institutional seed guy? And
we ended up, so we just closed a small round of funding recently. But when we looked at maybe a year back, the scene was completely different. A lot of institutional funding was there, valuations were skyrocketing, right? So when we got into the market, so timing was really wrong, where things were slowing down. Okay, so our competitors have raised at a larger valuation, but nobody is looking at that valuation right now. Right, so we didn't know what to do. So we didn't have any plan to raise a smaller round or anything. So I think currently every other larger startups also are going through a situation where they are now working for survival. They are not trying to build large funding rounds right now. They want to survive for next 12 months to 24 months. And by the time, if they are able to survive and show profitability or good metrics, there are investors with dry powder already available. People are taking a little back seat on putting the money on the table. So when we looked at investors initially, like maybe 6-7 months back, the biggest problem we faced was we were not even getting a meeting. Like we are trying to talk to investors are not ready to talk, because they were themselves figuring out what will they do when the economic scene comes down. Right? So we waited, and from December onwards, we started getting a lot of inbounds. We didn't know what happened. Last 3-4 months, we have got a lot of inbounds, where now we are in a stage where we understand investors have money. Investors have found a thesis in this particular market that we are in. So the biggest thing is, like, whatever is the economic situation, if you work in a situation where investors are interested in, or investors believe has a future, you will definitely get funded. There is no dearth of money in this market. It's only the timing and the kind of market you are working in. If you are working in a future market and investors believe that, yes, this is the next big industry that is going to boom, then they will come behind you and then start having conversations. So we have raised funds when we are a EV manufacturer, when EV manufacturing was not stylish as this. Right? We started in 2013 when Ather started at that point of time. Ather also struggled initially to get their first round of funding. We were not even single investor was believing that EV will be big at that point of time. So we actually spent a lot of time in making them understand. So we still believe that whatever we have lost in, say, time, in terms of time in building this ecosystem, has helped a lot of others who have come after us. So when you start getting into a niche industry and when you start building on it, you will not be the first gainers. The people who come behind will get that benefit, but that is how ecosystem is getting built. But now what we feel, how we read the situation right now is funding is very tough. Funding is very slow, but a lot of money is sitting on the sidelines. You need to show them profitability. You need to show them at least path to profitability. There are a lot of investors who can invest. And conversations are little, say, if you want to raise funds in 6 months, it might not happen. It might take 8 months, 9 months. So that delay, you have to factor into the current situation that you are in, the runways that you are having. You need to expand your runway, keep it ready for the investors to come in. So it's like a storm, right? After the storm passes, investors will come. By the time if you are alive, you will be the only one who get funded.
Vishal, I think you talk about being alive, jumping. I think is that the way you live your life and you run your business? That let's see what happens tomorrow.
If you're not living on edge, don't be in a startup.
Don't
right?
be in a startup. Great. I think we have seen startups running behind valuation, and there are startups who don't run behind valuation, like a Zerodha, no funding. They just want to just keep building great products. And then there's this whole thing of only if you're valued better, you raise more funds, you're successful. Okay. So how do you respond to that? Like in your example, are you running behind getting the next round of funding, valuation, or are you just striving to make a great product and you just wait for inbounds to come in? Vishal?
If I was going behind valuation, I would not have spent 10 years in startup ecosystem, right? If you're going behind valuation, don't spend more than 2 years. Raise your valuation as much as you can, sell it off or come out and live a good life. That's not something a startup entrepreneur should do. Valuation should follow. See, you cannot go in public and say I don't follow valuation, because you have to raise funds, right? So, and it's two school of thought. Say a Zerodha can actually build without funding, right? But in EV, like if you are trying to build a product, it is very difficult to, unless you have that much money, it is very difficult to bootstrap and build it, because you're competing with people who have a lot of money over there, and then you cannot be the one who is raising lesser amount of money. So there's always a competition. So what I feel is valuation is going to come if you have value inside. So if your unit metrics is good, if your business is sustainable, it can go. See, if you're looking at short-term growth, 1 year, 2 year growth, and then raise money, you will never succeed. You have to look at different scenarios, and each scenario can you succeed. In the worst scenario, if you succeed, and what is your margin at that point of time? If you yourself know that, and then you go out for valuation game, I think you can win the valuation game far better than anyone else, because there are different stages of fundraising. So people say that if you are not getting the valuation in the first round, you will never get it in the second round, third round, right? For me, it doesn't happen like that. Every time it is your progress that is going to matter on the valuation, and it is the conviction that you are giving your investor. And it depends on investor to investor. To be frank, there is no science of valuation. It depends on how you convince your investor, how you talk to your investor. If he believes that you are going to take it to $1 billion company, he will invest and you will do it. That's the only way valuation happens and funding happens. Everyone, see, math-wise, I can make projections to any numbers, and you discount 50% and then say this is my valuation. That is not the way it works, right? So for me, valuation will come, but don't go behind valuation. Build your scale, build your economics, show positive growth. Then you go and you prove yourself on the metrics, and then go to investor and say I will do 10x. Investor cannot say you cannot do it. That's where the valuation gives.
Panelists to be on the stage. We have a small token of gift for the evening. I'll request Shesha Paplikar, founder of BHIVE, to come down on the stage and please give the gift.